Good morning, everyone. I think if you can make your way to your seats, and I think we're going to start. All right on time. Look at that. Today is a good day. Today is Ocean Day, so welcome everyone. It's really, really nice to see you all. A lot of friendly faces, a lot of good, energy here. I don't know if you guys were in the opening of the Ocean Day today. I understand. It was really sort of powerful. Peter Thompson, as always, kind of delivered a very, very inspiring speech. And we can see that today there is really sort of a very different momentum and traction behind ocean. Obviously, ocean, 70% of the planet. We all know that here. And we also realize how important that is to really accelerate regenerative action towards the ocean and the planet. But of course, we're also very, very also aware of the fact that if we actually want to deliver this on the ground and be real about it, it needs to be led and driven by the people who actually live and breathe, blue economy, ocean restoration, and everything in between. So that's why today we're going to talk about how to unlock and accelerate this regenerative revolution, because ultimately that's what we need to do, right? If the 20th century should have been the century of sustainability, and clearly it was not, now the 21st century has to be about regeneration. It has to be the century of regeneration. We all know that we've overshot many planetary boundaries. Now we need to come back and be in the safe operating zone of our planet. For that we need to regenerate and we need to accelerate. The Great Coral Initiative was born in the Western Indian Ocean region. It's becoming Pan-African, it's very exciting, and it's all about accelerating and scaling up action. You're not here to hear me talk, so I'm gonna just switch over very quickly now to our for the opening speech from Global Affairs Canada. So Céline I'm not going to try to pronounce your name, like family name, because I'm not so sure if I don't want to ruin that. But the director from Global Affairs Canada is going to provide some opening remarks. Thank you so much, please.
So good morning, everyone. Thank you, Thomas, and thank you to everyone for being here on a Sunday morning. I had an early morning event yesterday. We were a little worried that on a break day on a Saturday there wouldn't be very many people, but quite a few showed up. So way to go, weekend sessions. So my name is Celine Heinbecker, and I work at Global Affairs Canada, which is the federal department that supports our foreign affairs, trade, and development work in Canada. And the topics that we're talking about today are very near and dear to Canada. I am not an expert myself. The contribution that I make is that I'm helping to make sure that our funding supports the kind of work that I think people in the audience are probably experts on. So we're talking about practical and collaborative approaches for accelerating ocean conservation, nature-based solutions, regenerative blue economy, channeling resources to local communities and indigenous peoples as stewards, managers, and sustainable users of seascapes. These are reflected in what Canada is doing at home and in the work that we do at the international scale. I'll start with a few words about what we're doing at home, and then I'll speak to what is actually my own mandate, which is at the international level. So this year, Canada released the Canada 2030 Nature Strategy for halting and reversing biodiversity loss. The strategy builds on federal investments in nature that contribute to the goal of conserving 30% of our lands and oceans by 2030. We have a growing number of marine protected areas, marine conservation areas, marine parks, and other area-based conservation measures. The Government of Canada works with Indigenous governments and communities to support their efforts in establishing, managing, and stewarding protected areas. We recognize the importance and value of Indigenous leadership and knowledge at home. Now I'll switch to talking about our international efforts, and I'll explain the funding sources for our work. From 2021 to 2026, we have a $5.3 billion international climate finance commitment, and there's a 20% target for programming that has biodiversity co-benefits. So that ends up being about $1 billion for biodiversity co-benefits over a five-year period. We also have a standalone $350 million commitment to support developing countries to implement the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework. I'll start with an example of programming that we're doing in a multilateral context. Canada contributes to the World Bank's Pro-Blue Multi-Donor Trust Fund to support developing countries in building sustainable blue economies. For example, Pro-Blue has provided support to the government of Mozambique to strengthen its knowledge base related to fisheries, plastics, pollution, and sustainably managing marine sources. In Ghana, Pro-Blue supported the co-financing of the West Africa Coastal Areas Resilience Investment Project. This project aims to help the Ghanaian government to catalyze blue economy investment with a focus on coastal erosion, flooding, and pollution. Another example in Africa is our support for the Africa Enterprise Challenge Fund's Women in the Blue Economy in Kenya project. The project focuses on attracting financing and growing more women and young women-owned micro, small, and medium enterprises in non-traditional markets, including related to conserving and sustainably using coastal and lake biodiversity. And we also have partnerships with Canadian and Indigenous partners. In 2021, the government earmarked about $350 million of the $5.3 billion that I mentioned earlier to leverage the expertise and commitment of organizations and Indigenous peoples in Canada to support climate change adaptation in developing countries through a focus on nature-based solutions with biodiversity co-benefits. About $300 million of that is allocated to supporting programming in sub-Saharan Africa. We call that envelope Partnering for Climate. And about $15 million will support Indigenous peoples in Canada to partner with Indigenous organizations in developing countries to increase climate resilience. One of our Partnering for Climate projects is part of the Great Blue Wall Initiative. It's called Regenerative Seascapes for People, Planet, and Nature, and we call it REC for short. It's managed by Mission Inclusion, which is a strong and experienced Canadian NGO. The REC project aims to strengthen the physical and socioeconomic resilience of people living in coastal communities in the Western Indian Ocean region through a network of seascapes in Kenya, Tanzania, Mozambique, Comoros, and Madagascar. REC uses nature-based solutions and gender-sensitive conservation practices to preserve, restore, and sustainably manage ecosystems. The project focuses on improving livelihoods of local communities with an emphasis on women and young people through value chains that are part of a climate adaptation approach. It also includes a blue business incubator. In addition to the projects that we're supporting, I'll give you a couple of examples. We wanted to make sure that our partners had support in their application of gender-sensitive, nature-based solutions. So we set up a couple of things to support the project portfolio. One thing is that we work with the International Institute for Sustainable Development, and it is a secretariat to a community of practice that we created, and we wanted this community practice to have a sort of Canadian flavor and added value. And then sort of niche areas of expertise in that community practice are indigenous leadership and gender equality. The steering committee includes indigenous organizations in Canada, and Canada has been a leader in gender equality in international assistance for several years now, and so that's something that we bring to that community practice. The IISD also hosts an online course on nature-based solutions that was developed with a few other donors and that we support. It's free, it's very accessible, and I have pamphlets that I will leave here if people are interested in that course. And we also work with the IUCN. What we wanted was for our partners to have a sort of a buddy system in a way so that they can work with the IUCN to make sure that they're applying the global standard on nature-based solutions in their programming and be learning in real time and sharing what troubles they're having and working things through with the IUCN and each other. And the flip side of that is that the IUCN is able to see how the global standard for nature-based solutions might be improved or strengthened based on the real-world experience of our projects. So I hope those examples give you some idea of what Canada is doing in this space, and I look forward to hearing from the panel. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I think, well, first and foremost, we commend the leadership and really sort of, the commitment of Canada when it comes to ocean conservation. You've hosted the last COP clearly successfully, and so we are very, very happy here to have you with us today. So thank you again for those opening remarks. Again, you're not here to listen to me, and I think you're all expecting and very much sort of anxious to hear about our very own David Obura. So I'm going to ask him to jump on board, and I don't think anyone really doesn't really need an introduction, but still, David is the chair of IPBS. He's also the director of Cordio. David, what's your
Thank you very much, Thomas. Right, let's see if I can handle this. Yeah, it's me. Okay, thanks very much. So yes, I guess I have an opening keynote, but it's nice to be here back in the Great Blue Wall and the Western Indian Ocean seascape space, because often I'm not, and often not in ocean spaces too. So it's great to be back in the blue, and with friends and partners going back many years. The Great Blue Wall, so what I'll try and touch on is some of the, I guess, related to locally managed marine areas in particular. Locally led ocean governance is in the title. We think that's very important. But the importance of the Western Indian Ocean region in terms of coral reefs and other marine ecosystems is very high. And we've been working with, of course, the partners on this for several decades, trying to build up a lot of energy and leadership. And it's great to see such big programs coming in and coherent support across the region, across the countries, focus on local issues as opposed to country by country. I think that makes a huge difference in terms of being able to have the right actions that are consistent from place to place. Sustainable seascapes is really a strong focus. And this is really important in that, of course, while within the global biodiversity framework, and a lot of our biodiversity and conservation actions, we focus on specific spaces, but those spaces are set in a broader context. It's particularly important in the ocean environment because the connectivity is very high. So the scaling from local to national and regional is very important. The SDGs is a very powerful framework for doing this. And here, and I like to use the circle like this because it de-emphasizes the separations between the goals and emphasizes the space in between, which here is that local space in the center. I think on the island of Zanzibar this picture comes from. And then also emphasizes that we can all come into this space from different perspectives to look at common solutions, and I think that's the essence of nature-based solutions. So we may come in from a focus on SDG 14 and the ecosystems and the resources, but of course talking to fishing communities and others locally, they're very concerned about their food security, their income levels, getting their kids to school and so on, and we need to address all of those needs. We need to balance nature, economy and society from local to higher levels, and this is something also that coming into the space of being the IPBES chair, I can really look at the work that we have done in IPBES to really strengthen this perspective, which I think is really needed in the broader space that we deal with. The slide on protected and conserved areas, this is from the protected planet, of course shows terrestrial and the large marine protected areas. The numbers, don't really worry about that, those are from Africa, the whole continental focus. But the main point about this figure is that while we can see the marine protected areas in general on larger maps, not always because some of them are small, seeing the locally managed areas is very difficult because you lose them when you go out to the larger scale because of course they're very small. And so focusing in on the local is very important. How to do that? I think with a lot of our frameworks, whether they're scientific or policy, like the Sustainable Development Goals, working out how to anchor them in local contexts is really important, and this is work I did from a few years back, looking at locally based narratives of the Sustainable Development Goals. So you could build a story around the lives of, in this case, this fishing family of Hamisi and Mariam, and then all the different things that they interact with locally. You can have a story about the 17 goals in completely non-technical language that makes sense to people locally. And I think it's very important to work out how to do that so we can really support local needs from our national, regional and global context of raising the, I guess, funding and also the policy context. How to support this from the IPBES perspective? So we have a very complex conceptual framework which we use to organize knowledge about biodiversity and ecosystem services. But it's very inaccessible to most people. But what it really does is it talks about the relationships between nature, how nature supports economic activities through direct uses, that's nature's contributions to people, and then economic activities provide benefits to society, and then the indirect and direct drivers of decline currently in nature, but they could be positive as well. And what's useful here is because you can then be very explicit about the types of actions that are needed on nature in terms of sustaining it, on economic activities so they're sustainable, and on society so that benefits are well shared. And the seascape framing is very important for being able to integrate those across spaces. And of course, no surprise, many of our friendly targets from the Global Biodiversity Framework and the Sustainable Development Goals package into this kind of a narrative, which is very relevant at local scales. Integration of seascapes. So now I'll just come in the last couple of minutes to talking about the thing is when we do, when we start to fund programs, we have to get more and more explicit about the outcomes, the outputs, how we're framing the activities, the global drivers or movers of where money is coming from to do action. And to be honest, a lot of the action around the Global Biodiversity Framework comes from protected areas. It's that target 3. I dislike intensity saying 30 by 30. I understand why we have it, but the problem is that it distracts away from the much more complex actions we need to take to embed these protected and conserved areas in the broader context in which they are. So the seascape framing is very important. This is from the IPBES IPCC workshop report. So, we're advocating now for 100% spatial planning. This is the Coastal Area Management Framework, Coastal Zone Management. It's the Sustainable Ocean Plans from the High-Level Panel on Ocean Sustainability. And that's target 1 of the Global Biodiversity Framework, is that let's plan in a biodiversity inclusive way across all landscapes and seascapes. The proportion of that needs to be under high protection is under target 3, of course, that's very important. But then unfortunately, it gets messier when you start to think about the people dimensions. So fisheries are really included under sustainable use of wild species, that's target 5. Sustainable management of those wild species is under target 9, and the benefit sharing. And then target 10 is the area that is under sustainable production. So I think it's really important that we need to think very strategically about how to validate national efforts so that their contributions are captured under multiple targets of the convention and not just under target 3, because it doesn't include all the actions that need to be taken. And that's the whole point behind the whole framework. And I think in the end, we actually came up with, or countries approved, a very comprehensive framework. The wording can be awkward because of the final negotiations, but like with the Sustainable Development Goals, if you pull a little bit away from the detail of the wording, you really get to quite a nuanced sort of framing of the actions and the things we need to deal with on the ground. And then finally, target 2 is particularly important, not just for restoring nature for biodiversity reasons, which we have to do in many places, but also restoring nature across all spaces so that it sustains people's needs at local levels across the various needs that they have. And so then finally coming to this with a focus on locally managed areas, which many of us are looking at. This is a project under the REC project and the collaborations we have with IUCN, WIOMSA and other partners in the region. We're trying to see how can we promote the use of the other effective conservation measure designations in our countries, because there's very little scope, or almost no scope in most countries, for government-led protection along the coastlines. In the extended EEZs, for sure, in deeper waters, but not on the coastline. So other effective conservation measures are the only real opportunity we have to expand the coverage of very good nature conservation activities. OECMs are the opportunity we have to do that, but the problem is they're just under target 3. And while that's important for many reasons, the OECM framing has come from a perspective like, irrespective of the primary purpose of this area, does it have nature conservation benefits? Whereas I think when you're approaching communities who are on the ground and it's all they have, I think we have to have the perspective that we really respect and we need to prioritize your purpose for fishing and using this area and having biodiversity benefits as well. But you can't package a lot of those interests under target 3. You sort of need to package them under targets 5, 9, or 10, and perhaps 22 and 23. So how are we going to work that out with the procedures that we have now? I think this is, the ultimate nature-based solution in many parts of Africa along the coastlines is locally led protection and governance that we can set up. And so we need to work out, and I think our projects are addressing those things, but we need to have that dialogue with partners across multiple countries, and then of course with terrestrial processes as well to upscale, and use OECMs to strengthen and validate community interests, and also as onboarding. So not just assessing whether they meet the criteria or not, but given performance across a range of indicators, how can we invest in improving performance across these indicators so that maybe over a 5 to 10 year period we can get full benefits in conservation and sustainable use as well. And so I think that's a big challenge we have in the Great Blue Wall region. I think we have a great framework for addressing that with these projects. So thank you very much.
Perfect. Thank you so much, David. I think what you've just talked about really sort of speaks about the need for us to unpack, right, this GBF and find a way to sort of operationalize it on the ground. And indeed, it's all about, because ultimately what happened on the ground is, you don't have a specific area just for target 3 and another one just for target 9, etc. It's all is very much integrated. It's kind of this dynamic that we need to sort of play around and work with. And indeed, as part of the Great Blue Wall, what we've sort of been supporting and working with our partners is to establish this connected network of regional seascape, which very much aims at doing exactly that, right? And actually, we're going to try to unpack that a bit. So I'm going to hand over the moderation of the first panel to my very first colleague. Well, no, not first, sorry. Like my very new colleague, because he's actually joining. He's not yet IUCN officially. He's going to be IUCN officially in 2 days. But still, you know, that's how we roll at IUCN. We just throw people under the bus and we see what happens. So Jeremy, over to you. Cheers.
Okay. Good morning, merci Thomas, and yeah, it's a pleasure to join you all today. So we're going to jump into our first panel for the morning, and it's going to be essentially something I like, which is bridging. And we really want to focus on bridging conservation and communities, advancing inclusive and effective marine governance in the Western Indian Ocean, implications for ocean conservation in the Western Indian Ocean. But we're actually going to add on a little bit so that we take a bit of a Pan-African view of things as well. So joining me today, we'll have 5 panelists. If you guys can take a seat, please. I understand there may be a bit of time constraints for Christian, but we'll try and see how we can keep the things. We have Micah Heidelberg, Head of Science for Odyssey. We have Christian Taliaki, CEO for Flora and Fauna International. We have Elizabeth Cameron, Blue Ocean Programs Manager for Conservation International Iberia, and also African Wildlife Foundation's Policy Fellow. We also have Anne Momo from the CEVP, Fundraising and Partnership Manager, and Laurie Katz, Blue Nature Alliance Co-Lead Conservation International. So as we've kind of had from Thomas going forward, we definitely want to hear from you guys who've just had a great keynote address, lots to unpack. And I'm just going to start us off with an opening remarks. We'll keep our questions or our responses to about 2 minutes, more or less. And the first question really is, you know, what role does your organization or network play in enhancing the effectiveness and equity of marine governance in the Western Indian Ocean, but also across Africa? And we just have about 2 minutes to go, and maybe we can start off with Kristen. And use this.
Thank you very much. I completely echo, David, what you said about being in an ocean community. I spend most of my time these days not in the ocean with lions and tigers and bears, but my throwaway line is, I'm an ocean guy discovering the land for the first time. Which seems to go well amongst the terrestrial group, and it allows for my slight ignorance when it comes to chimpanzees and tigers. So I'm not here to talk about that, but it's a great pleasure to be here, and I'm a huge fan of what Thomas is doing with the Great Blue Wall. And when he asked me to say a few words, it was deeply an honor, so thank you for allowing me to be here. And as Jeremy said, I have to rush off to something else right at noon, so if you forgive me that if I get up and head out. So I'm speaking on behalf of my colleagues in the region. We have offices and operations in Kenya, Tanzania, and Mozambique. And we're very much focused on the community, people side of things. And so when we talk about, to answer your question, for us it's about collaboration. And that's our starting point. We're collaborating with local and community-based organizations and people and finding out where they are. And then how do we move that forward so that we're moving with a more sustainable approach to the resources. But amongst that, it's integrating biodiversity conservation with community livelihoods and supporting the capacity building, the local stewardship, and ensuring that those conservation efforts are inclusive and that they benefit those that are most reliant on marine ecosystems. It does concern me at this conference that people dimension in some of the sessions that I've been in is kind of being ignored, and that if we don't start demonstrating very quickly the benefits from biodiversity that people are deriving, then we're not going to make the progress I think we need to make. Just a couple more thoughts on what we do. So we provide technical expertise, facilitating that community-led marine protected areas, but advocating for policies that incorporate both scientific and traditional knowledge. And that's a lot of what certainly we advocate as an organization. It's and, not or. And how do we bring that together? And so we're creating these governance models that protect biodiversity while respecting and uplifting local rights and livelihoods, which is a key dimension certainly in the region and others in other areas as well. So I think from our perspective, this approach promotes both ecological resilience as well as socioeconomic equity to really get the marine governance elements right. And I think, David, you hit the nail on the head on a number of points there around looking at those capacities, but making sure if that 30 by 30 is going to be very difficult at the country level, what should we be doing to ensure that those local communities have the wherewithal in order to deliver those and support those other governance areas. So I completely agree with what you said.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks, Jeremy, for the introduction. So on the side of CECAT, we Public Project Trust was established in 2015 as a result of the debt swap for adaptation, and followed by the Blue Bonds in 2016. Our primary role is financing, provision of financial resources to stakeholders and players in Seychelles working within the strategic objectives of CECAT, encompassing climate change, blue businesses, blue economy, and marine protected areas. Through the process, obviously, we do that through our grants program every year, which every year focuses on a particular objective, or it will cover the whole spectrum of the five objectives of the trust. We oversee implementation of projects through the grants program. At the same time, we obviously have international projects with partners covering, livelihoods, protection, economic benefits to the community or to the different sectors and the country as a whole. So our role also spans out towards policy making. Though we in essence a public-private trust, but also we have a contribution in policy making nationally through government initiatives and activities and programs that touches at the grassroots or community level. But above everything else, in line with our agreements and understandings with our partners and ideals and ethics as an organization, it's very critical that all the engagements and activities that we have nationally, do consider input and contribution from the lowest levels of society or grassroots level, moving forward. So it's both a top-down approach, but also a bottom-up approach that we believe in, depending on the initiative in question. Thanks.
Thank you. My name is Mikey. I'm on behalf of Odyssea. Thank you so much, Thomas, for the opportunity to present this very newborn project. Our headquarters are currently located in Saudi Arabia, and it's constantly moving. We are a boat, a big boat. I'm not sure if it was possible to pull the photo of the boat in the end, just to get an idea.
I think it's not on the slides, but we could try.
That would be great. So this boat is filled with people that are very passionate about the ocean. We come from many, many different backgrounds that include scientists, economists, storytellers, geographic, videographers, and the ocean connects us, and we actually would rather have our feet in the sand or the water than in high heels. So coming like this is rather be there. Our mission with the Great Blue Wall is actually something that is exactly what we needed, because we sorry, a little bit.
Thank you.
Right, better. The people that conform this project, we still have hope. We have seen projects that work. We have seen biodiversity hotspots that have no explanation on why they are still hotspots, because the oceans are warming, and they are or are not inside MPAs. So we believe that there's something else going on that we haven't looked at, and that brings us back to the communities and brings us back to the coasts. We truly believe in that conservation comes from the inside out, not from top down. And so our mission essentially is to look for these secrets, to look for these resilient communities, these biodiversity hotspots, these stories that are not out there, and we try to collect them, to document them, and to bring these experiences of successful conservation to the next country. And this geographical area is just perfect because, as well, it's also a difficult thing, right? Because they're not really obvious, but for our purpose, and I think for that case study where we see maybe that will work, many different countries in a small place, maybe we can make it work just by bringing these successful stories or conservation success stories from one country to the other. I think that was 2 minutes. So next questions, I think can go a little bit deeper. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thanks, Jeremy, and thank you for the invitation. So I'm representing Conservation International and the Blue Nature Alliance, and with both hats, we're honored to be here. Conservation International is really honored to be partnering on the REC program, supporting 5 gender-responsive regenerative seascapes. We have 20 plus years of experience in seascapes around the world, not in the Western Indian Ocean, but in other parts of the world. And I've been part of most of that journey and have never heard it framed in that gender responsive way. So when I heard that that's the direction that this seascape work is going, I was just so honored and thrilled that that's the focus for this particular piece. Part of what we're hoping to bring is some of those lessons learned and experiences from other places where we have done regenerative seascapes. My own kind of deep dive experience with seascapes was in the Bird's Head Seascape in West Papua, Indonesia, which I think offers a lot of lessons, and I think we're going to be getting the teams from Western Indian Ocean to travel out to Papua together, and I'll offer a little bit more reflections on that in a minute. The second hat that I'm wearing is the Blue Nature Alliance, which is a global initiative that is working to accelerate the pace, the effectiveness, the equity of large-scale ocean conservation around the world. With a primary focus on Target 3, sorry David, but very much hear the call for that integration. In that context, we have 3 exciting partnerships in the Western Indian Ocean. The first is a country-specific partnership in Seychelles with CEVP, so I'll let my colleague here speak to that work. The second is in partnership with IUCN and Mahari, focused on building out the legal recognition of LMMAs at the country and regional scale. And then the third is in partnership with the Western Indian Ocean Marine Science Association and their WyoCompass program, which is working to train and certify MPA professionals all around the region. So hundreds of people who are qualified managers to actually build the effectiveness of those places from small scale to larger scale that are being designated around the region.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks for the introduction. So my name is Elizabeth D. Kamara from Liberia, and I work with Conservation International as well. And I work on the Blue Oceans program. It's a new program that started after the first ever Oceans Conference in West Africa. So we got funding from the Swedish government for that. And this project has 7 teams, which we are working with the local communities and artisanal fisheries. So we look at blue economy, and with blue economy, we try to work with the government institutions, especially the Liberia Maritime Authority. They are the ones pioneering in that cause. And we also try to draft a strategic roadmap on how these resources can be generated and also sustain the community people that exist around the coast. And Liberia has one of the largest coastline, and about 9 of our coastal communities exist there because we have like 15 counties. So 9 of them are along the coast. We also try to push for marine pollution, where we have community-based enterprises actually working along with these people to carry out awareness on marine pollution and having them involved in implementing projects along that line. For our third team, we look at sustainable fisheries, and we have microcredit loans that we've been able to give to the women to empower them in the communities, and then also to push for it to be revolving. And even after the Blue Oceans program ends, it can be more sustainable. They can be able to continue to invest and have others benefit from that. And we also have environmental social safeguards, where we are also working with civil society organizations across all of our 9 coastal communities. And they are pioneering that cause, like taking out the initiative and being environmental stewards. And for our last 2 is institutional capacity. And Liberia has not had a global mangrove inventory of the area. So we've been able to launch the Global Mangrove Alliance with Blue Nation Alliance and Mangrove Breakthrough. And that has been really good because now we're training the young people to actually come up to do the ground truthing and have us to have an idea on what mangroves we have, how can we restore double protection as well. Thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone. And these open remarks are really just a taste of what's to come for the next bit. And I really appreciated all your, insights in terms of how we speak about this region, because as someone who's just been out of the region for a couple of years, just hearing it again, seeing how much momentum there is, it's always really appreciative to see the people who are behind that, the people who want to extend and bring things further. Just to go for our more in-depth questions, and I think, the first one goes to Micah, and maybe we can also illustrate your boat, which unfortunately you weren't able to show on the screen, but we'd love to hear more about that. And I think, given the importance of scientific research in providing data for effective conservation, how can we effectively bridge the gap between scientific findings and conservation practice to inspire change and ensure sustainable outcomes?
Thank you. Well, explaining a little bit more about the boat, it's a 39 meters long sailing boat. It has a lab on it, a small lab but pretty efficient, with a bunch of technology including eDNA from DNA extraction all the way to sequencing, looking at water qualities and similar equipment to have the goal of that is to get a little baseline quick analysis on what's going on in the seascapes in this case. Now, looking back, and that question I think is very important because as a scientist myself, I've been in the university for over 13 years. A lot of knowledge, loved it, but a little bit too long, because you finally find that whatever you do is very little of that really becomes effective. The way until you do your science, you publish your science, you communicate the science, you make it understandable, it comes to the governance, and eventually it will come back to where we need it. I think maybe 1% of that, well, there's actually scientists looking into that right now. I hope it's going to be published soon. But it's just taking so long, and we don't have that time anymore. So not only is there a bridge or a gap currently between science and implementation, but the people. And I think if we talk about ocean, then it's specifically scientists and fishermen. And that shouldn't be like that. So we have, in all our experiences in different projects that we have around the world, we took that way back, and it should start differently. Communication should start differently. We're not from the country, we're not part of the community, so who are we to tell them what they should do? And specifically for the science, if, in this case, the boat serves like a platform that people can use or decide not to use. I believe it brings opportunities, but in order to make them understand or wanting them, communication has to change. So we're offering the boat, we're offering opportunities that can be used, and that is not only on the science itself, but everything that goes around. Hands-on. Make science understandable, but have them part of the data collection and how DNA works, for instance. And we hope that through our mission that can become a little bit more mainstream, but specifically for that questions, I think scientists have to come down a step and also communicate that, for most of the science that we need to value these seascapes, to get the data that we need in order to move forward, you don't really need to have a PhD. And we can involve the communities, not only in data collection, but the whole methodology and the scientific method. And that's what we're doing. And it's so much fun. It's so much fun, talking about DNA, having people do DNA extraction, and that before was just something, that just can do somebody that is 15 years in the academia, and it's not true. So I hope we all can follow that path, and that way incorporate science and data results more efficiently into decision making. Just to my point. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you so much for your insights. And I think we're talking about co-design, but I think also a lot of co-exploration, and it's all about where does this demand come from, where does this engagement happen. This is really interesting, and I understand the expedition will be starting sometime next year, so this is something to definitely put out and look out as countries in the region definitely taking part. My second question goes to Anna, and it's really focused on CECAT's, It's really focused on CECAT's vision, and I think, when we're talking about all the things we've just been covering in terms of thinking about the region and thinking about Seychelles in particular, but CECAT's vision is for Seychelles' oceans and islands to be stewarded by people, generating sustainable benefits to future generations. What lessons learned and best practices have emerged from CECAT's work in regard to how we deliver inclusive, gender-responsive, and effective marine governance in the Western Indian Ocean?
I think the main lesson, and it's part of our DNA, is in reference to innovative financing in a bigger scheme of things, ensuring that the resources, whenever they come, like in our case, like I mentioned previously, through two big innovative financing schemes, SORP and Blue Bond, as well as through the different partners that we have. Robert mentioned the partnership that we have with DNA, we have others, TNC, Q, Oceans 5, and others. Goes down to the level that's required, and ensuring that this financing is impactful and makes a difference, but even more that there's accessibility to it. So we have the necessary structures in place to ensure that there's a proper monitoring and evaluation of that, and also impact assessment to ensure that projects are not just one-time projects, but especially at community level, there's the necessary structures and involvement that can sustain the effort at that level. So for us, the main experience, which we've been discussing with Thomas, in reference to Great Blue Wall, and how the experience of an organization like CECAT can be translated at the regional level, to have similar mechanism at the regional level. So for us, it's about seeing how we can bring this knowledge that we've had nationally and share it amongst other countries, in the region, especially when it comes to conservation trust funds. It's something that's, it's not widely present. So CECAT, along with two other trust funds, are the ones, being more proactive in that domain. So we hope, our whole experience with regards to financing, how you translate all the way down to the grassroots level, will, can be translated at the regional level. But also, financing comes with very good partnerships, and the right partnerships. And this is something that's been very key in terms of the success of Seychelles. I wouldn't say we've been lucky, but we've managed to build that relationship, and it's continuing for the future. Certainly, we've had the good indication that whatever we have going now can continue in the future. But this comes along with accountability, trust building, but also capacity, nationally, to be able to implement and also bringing the resources. Like here, at the COP, there's a lot of reflection about bringing more financing resources, nationally, regionally, but we have to be very careful that whilst we bring in the resources, there needs to be the right capacity to be able to absorb these resources and implement it in an efficient manner and impactful also, very importantly, impactful manner. So that's that's the experience I think we hope to bring, at the regional level. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Anna. And jumping straight into the next question for Christian, and I think David was talking a lot about OECMs. So how do we really ensure that the benefits of OECMs extend beyond environmental protection to enhance local livelihoods and biodiversity?
Yeah, I'll be really brief because I think David did a wonderful job of that and talking about that. I think my challenge to all of you is to I mean, all of you know, I'm sure know what OECMs are. I'm sure each of you have lots of experience around that. Well, my challenge to you is go, talk to someone in this conference who may not know about OECMs, and convince them that this is not a conservation exercise. This is a people and nature exercise that's coming very much from an economic lens. And the importance of OECMs is to then align the conservation benefits with the economic desires of those local communities and where they want to get to. So I think, certainly from our perspective and then some of the things that we're doing, in the region, it's very much around that, and it's things that you've seen the entire panel that's talked about the people-centered approaches, and it's so wonderful to hear. I don't remember hearing the same sort of focus on a panel like this in years past, just reminding ourselves about the people-centered side of things. So in terms of OECMs, it's got to be coming sort of people-first approach and then build out from there, starting where they are, where do they want to get to, rather than imposing this global approach on something that may not be appropriate and context-specific and at the pace they want to go. The other thing, if you'll allow me, just while I have the microphone, because I think I just want to encourage Tomas and the Great Blue Wall and others. And I was reminded of this peer-to-peer exchange this week at Valle. We've been working on the coast of Honduras, moving 26 fishing communities away from destructive fishing practices. And that includes between sort of 800 to 900 fishermen within in this area. We brought 5 of those community members here, and it was a wonderful reminder just how valuable that is. Not only to think, A, we're not alone in this and what we're trying to do, hearing about OECMs and what others are doing on that, and just really feeling what they're doing matters. And with the Great Blue Wall, whether it's exchanges in Ampat or West Papua or other places, it's part of our DNA. But let's not lose that thread. I felt like I'd forgotten the value of that, and then sitting with those community members and how important it was to come to an event like this, to have exchanges with you all, with their peers, and doing that. So as you go through that process, I encourage us all to support Thomas and the Great Blue Wall and his colleagues and others that have this, and figure out how we can do this better together. How can we bring those people that we're working together and exchange those ideas, and let's get them to have the benefits that comes out of it. So I probably apologize for deviating, but I have to leave shortly, and I wanted to be sure I made that point.
Yeah, no, that's a great point to make and something to echo. And I think, as we move to our next question, which I'll pose to Elizabeth, and we've been hearing about, expeditions in the Great Blue Wall countries and the ocean. We're thinking about innovative finances, the lessons learned from them. We're really trying to cover a people-centered approach to everything. So the next question, which I have for Elizabeth, is what is the potential for greater knowledge sharing and cooperation between the West Indian Ocean and the West African region for effective ocean governance, conservation?
Alright, so thank you for that question. So first and foremost, I would like to say we should be able to have regional knowledge sharing hubs where we can also be able to learn from not only researchers, as you pointed out, but also the community leaders as well, to have them involved and also share their experiences, because one of the things that we've learned so far is that they have their own traditional measures that they're putting in place, and once we actually share our experiences and learn from them, it's very impactful. And also I wanted to say that youth involvement, because youth actually has the expertise. We've realized that with the community being involved and the young people being on the platform to engage with policy makers as well, they can actually challenge the courts to be stewards. And one of the things we've actually been pushing for is to work with the government institutions to have a portal where not only one institution gets to contribute, but it has to be accessible to everyone. And so you have maritime contributing, as well as the National Fisheries and Aquaculture Authority, as well as Forestry Development Authority. We can have those platforms. We've also been able to have the Young Women in Marine Science Network, and they are also looking forward to sharing that experience where they come maybe to Seychelles, learn about what works or what hasn't, and we can be able to influence that and actually put it in our own setting and see how best we can be able to have a context to that. I believe that this program that I'm here for, which is the African Wildlife Foundation Conservation Policy Fellowship, has been able to give me that that access to meet with people. Okay. Yeah, thank you. To meet with people and actually see how negotiations are being led and actually have this access, because when you're back in your country, you don't have access to these people. You don't have access to learning about how these negotiations are made and how people are actually pushing for a country perspective. So here we get to learn, and I'm proud to be a policy fellow this year and to meet with all of these wonderful people, hear about the work that's ongoing, and actually go back and do the same peer-to-peer education where we can replicate some of these things and be impactful in our communities. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Elizabeth. And I'm half tempted to leave the microphone over here and speak, but we'll try and figure that out a bit. But to go to Laurie and building on such great momentum, I think it's really important to think about the people and who we are over here. So, as a global ocean conservationist with extensive experience, in your view, how important are regional collaborations initiatives that we're talking about now, like the Great Blue Wall Initiative, for achieving global conservation goals? And how can we ensure that we retain the people who are involved with that, the knowledge, the institutional building? How can we grow from that and really consolidate and extend?
Thank you. I'll see if I can get away from the speaker there. So we've been hearing all week, all year, some doom and gloom, right? We've got a beautiful framework that has been put forward, approved 2 years ago, but we're not on track to meet those global goals, right? And this week's really a call to action to say we need to have much more significant action, partnership, mobilization of resources if we're going to hit these global targets. For me, one of the things that is standing in our way is a number of false dichotomies that we are operating within. It's small or it's big. It's target 3 or it's the other targets. It's MPAs or it's OECMs. It's community-based or it's top-down. And I think that in those dichotomies, we create divisions and we stop figuring out integrated solutions that actually can move momentum forward. So what I love about the Great Blue Wall, what I love about these regional initiatives, seascapes in particular, is that it's about breaking down those dichotomies. It's about creating a shared vision. If it's done well, that shared vision is a bottom-up, collectively generated one that everybody can then rally behind and contribute in different unique ways. And we have some diversity of expertise and experiences here, right? If all of that was being channeled towards a shared vision for a region, that's powerful. And then you layer different governance and solutions that can work together. So I mentioned the Bird's Head Seascape before. Hopefully we do have this opportunity for exchange. Thank you for the shout out for that. In the Bird's Head, this is a seascape, indigenous-led seascape. It's the size of the UK. We were told 20 years ago, indigenous-led conservation can't happen at that scale. In the same way that people say communities and LMMAs can't be scaled up to a regional level. And through partnership, we said, well, why not? Right? Let's actually build the community coherence, have the network of communities that work together to create that shared vision. Let them first designate with their own rights, their own traditional practices, their own tenure, what they want to do in their waters, and then invite government to layer upon that additional management and governance systems that go from the community level to the regency, to the provincial, to the national level. And then inspires regional level coral triangle action in other countries. So I really am inspired by the Great Blue Wall. It's kind of start on that journey.
and really hope that similarly that there is kind of that shared vision, bottom up, people at the very center of it, and that we then bring the different layers of governance to be working together to have much greater action than would be possible if we did top down or bottom up by itself.
Excellent, so much to process from everybody, and again, thank you, Laurie, for sharing your expertise on this, and I think we're going to start wrapping up, but before we end, and it's been a really great panel, it's been really engaging to listen to you guys, and very excited to see what's coming next. But as we basically wrap up, I just want to spend about maybe 30 seconds to a minute each, just asking what messages would you want to share with other regions? I mean, it could be from the Valle to West Africa, as we've been talking about today, but it could be further than that. When it comes to experiences of the Great Blue Wall in marine conservation, and we've heard a lot today, so it'd be great to echo things if you want, but please go ahead and take it from there.
Very quickly, I just strongly advocate for cross-sectoral partnerships. Don't think about these things in silos. I've been in a number of sessions, I think we all have, where people say, how many people from the energy sector? No hands go up. Who's been here from the health sector? No hands go up. And just because we're talking about communities, we can't disaggregate those sectors. We've got to look at those cross-sectoral partnerships, and I think all of us are involved in some of these things. And I completely agree with you in terms of changing the story. And that's what I love about the Great Blue Wall. And the way I think about this, Thomas, is I think about the things that we're all involved with, the communities are the bricks of this wall, right? But I want to take that a little bit further. And what I mean by that is we all see these walls that are made of different sized rocks, and they kind of somehow fit together, but they form a wall. And so as we're thinking about these solutions and the things that we're going to put together for this blue wall, let's think about not something that's uniform, but recognize that what's happening in Mozambique is not necessarily what's happening in Kenya or Madagascar or others, and how we build that wall. So as we talk about this, I just really encourage us all to think about context-specific, cross-sectoral approaches, and there are going to be many different layers and pieces to this wall that are going to fit in.
Yeah, I think wrapping up, there's only one word that's been coming up very clearly is about partnerships and moving forward, especially with the Great Blue Wall Initiative. I mean, we all say we are one ocean, geographically different oceans, but one ocean. But I think the way forward is to bring together. There's several initiatives trying to do that, to bring together experiences and expertise, champions from different regions to share experience and knowledge with other regions. Within the Western Indian Ocean, this is, like I mentioned, this is one of the objectives of CEVP. We're trying to bring what we know now, at the regional level to partners. The key is to connect, all regions and to know the strengths of each. And most of the partners are, implementing globally, activities globally. And I think that's the way forward, whilst we talk universally, collectively about all the challenges of we're facing, as one community in reference to the ocean. The key is to come together, and I think this is what the Great Blue Wall is striving, and I will call on other partners to work together with the initiative, and vice versa also for the region. Being a little biased with regards to the Western Indian Ocean now, but there's a lot of things happening on the policy level, convention level, the Nairobi Convention level. They're trying to move in a positive direction with regards to strategy and policies, and there's already some knowledge sharing in reference to different things like marine spatial planning. So I think it's a good time for everybody to leading up to the Oceans Conference next year. And this morning we were discussing about the Blue Economy Finance meeting also prior to that. So I think it's a good time for all these to come together so that we can better have a better collective action and effort in regards to oceans. so that the people or the community or the grassroots will benefit in the end. We will do the hard and dirty job, but in the end, it's the people who's asking, in terms of what's happening, what's available to us, and what's being done. So we have to figure this out. I think the answer is there. It's just to put more effort and come together. Yeah.
Thank you. I think if I had one message for everyone that would possibly fit for everything, which is very difficult, I would wish everybody never to stop getting amazed about new stories, about new places. We are all here because we have one thing in common, and that's the passion for the ocean. Sometimes if you've been working in the same thing for 10 years, you might forget about it, and it's time to go back and dive. But I think that is something very important because, and especially working with so many people that have different backgrounds and we don't necessarily speak the same language, there's this one thing that we do have in common, that's the passion for the ocean. And I think if we can express our amazement and our curiosity and just being open to learning new things from everybody we speak to and whatever we see, then we find new ways to work together.
I like that one. So I'll plus one everything that has come before. I have been reflecting. I'm really inspired by the work that the Western Indian Ocean Marine Science Association is doing, building the capacity of managers on the ground, and just that network of people dedicated to effectiveness, working and to protect and manage the ocean. And part of that is just brings me back to how important people are. That these seascapes, whether it's at any scale, it is the people and it is the champions that are going to make it successful. And so that investment in a large network of people in real professional training, in many generations and layers of professional jobs and work is huge. And I'm going to take it a little bit in a sad note, but I hope not too much. But I was, again, reflecting on the Bird's Head Seascape, and we just recently lost a conservation hero who is at the center of that kind of indigenous-led seascape work, a close friend and colleague, Chris Tebu. And he's left a hole in that seascape that is massive. And I am very hopeful that the next generation of leaders will be able to step up and keep that momentum and keep that work going. But at this moment, I don't know. And so as I'm thinking about the incredible work happening in Western Indian Ocean and the starting place of building a network of people who are working together and building that capacity, I would just say lean in on that. Lean in on your incredible people and champions. Don't count on anyone, but build a deep bench. They're going to be the ones that carry this forward. Thank you.
Yeah, I think the panelists have actually captured all of what we've all been saying, leading, having local people involved and understanding their perspective and pushing forward. From my point of view, I would like to say that we should involve the young people more and keep having them to share knowledge, peer-to-peer education, but also the partnerships are really essential into moving what we're doing in the various coast areas, and to also be able to have them in a network where it's not only where they are, but also to be able to have them network with other key government institutions as well. And then the next thing is to be able to have all of these communities communicating with each other, because sometimes we operate in silos and it actually affects the work we do on the ground. So being able to communicate and share those experiences will be really essential in implementing the work that we do. Thank you.
Well, there we have it, folks. I think it's been a great panel. I will not try to sum up. I think there's a great amount of messages and key information that's been shared today. All that there's left before we pass on to the second panel is a big round of applause for their contributions.
Well done, Jeremy, you passed the test. This is done. Yeah. So I've put on my moderation jacket now because I was freezing, but also because things are about to get real. And I know we're a bit late, so I'm just going to invite my fellow panelists just to join me. Alfredo from the World Economic Forum is the head of the Ocean Program. Eric is the head of the Natural Capital Solution from Société Générale. Tony, who is the head of the Regenerative Businesses at TechnoServe. And Laura, who's the researcher and professor at the Stockholm Resilience Institute. So we've heard a lot about and actually I really love it because not so long ago, even last time when IUCN co-organized the International Congress, the Impact 5, it was all about nature, and only about nature, and very, very little about the people, and even less so about the economy, which to me was kind of mind-boggling because what do you think is going to happen in those NPAs? What do you think is going to happen in those 30 by 30 sort of areas? It's not just going to be a vacuum with nothing happen, and then the rest, in the rest of the world, we carry on. And so I really see this kind of building momentum towards how can we develop an economy and economic activities that are compatible with conservation outcome, and not only compatible, but actually become a driver of conservation outcomes. So I'm going to throw the ball to you, Alfredo. You work at the World Economic Forum, obviously, trying to figure that out and see how can we build a global community around regenerative blue economy, and how can public and private partnership can really deliver on those. So over to you. Thanks.
Thank you so much for the invitation, Thomas, and thank you so much everyone for joining today. Let me start with saying that understanding the opportunity of the regenerative blue economy starts with understanding impacts and dependencies both on nature and on local communities. We need to really think about, if we are going to have a real transition, how do we consider this in a responsible way? And so, first you consider impacts and dependencies, then you try to minimize, and then you go above and beyond to actually contribute. And so I will just give, for the sake of time, very brief examples of this. The first one is, how do we really support the private sector? And I have been spending a lot of my time talking to very, very happily the increasing number of businesses that are attending these type of events and engaging for real in the conversation. Talking to them about what are you doing to understand your impacts, your dependencies, and your opportunities, to act on nature and to make sure that that is in a responsible way that also considers people. Thank you so much for mentioning that. And so, for example, for us, we have two sectors that we really focus on from a marine perspective: renewable infrastructure and ports. Both of them can have huge impacts both on nature and the people that operate on them. So we have been doing deep dives on these two industries. The second one is, and then the role of the public-private partnership in that is that, of course, you don't want companies taking a step back because they think they are going to lose ground competitively if they do good practices. You want the governments to reciprocate and basically say, yes, we want you to do this, and yes, we are going to require others to do it with you. The second part is investing in innovation. I think we need innovation, not only from a technological perspective, that's the one that often comes to mind, but also social entrepreneurship, new business models, new ways to engage communities in the whole supply chain process. And particularly, I think that for many of the sectors that we always talk about in the ocean economy, post-processing harvest or a few very specific ones have incredible opportunities for women, for girls, in a way that it's difficult to identify in other parts of, and other sectors in the same way as in the blue economy. And then the final one is, okay, you already invested in your operations, you already tried to find the innovation, and it's still not enough. What are you going to do to reinvest on nature? David, copying some of your thinking, to return some of that capital to nature, some of that investment to nature. And I think there's a responsibility and there's an increasing awareness for this. And so from our side, very happy to support on how do we guide that thinking. I'll stop there for now.
Thank you so much, Alfredo. Yeah, no, I think that's a very, very important point that indeed David sort of makes very often, is that business needs to start becoming also a driver of conservation itself. It's just not possible to keep, driving an economy and being it the driver of degradation of our home ultimately. It's like having a bakery and then you bake croissant because you love croissant and then you don't take care of your bakery. At one point, you'll stop producing croissant. Right? And I mean, I'm half French. We want croissant, right? Don't we? Of course. So, well, actually, I'm going to use that as the perfect segue for another fellow French guy. Donc, yeah, if you can a bit sort of, elaborate on this croissant, metaphor, but like from a bank perspective, what do you see and what the role would be of Société Générale in particular in accelerating this kind of development? So, over to you, Eric.
Thank you. Yeah. The main challenges for this new business model from a banker perspective is to address how we can manage the risk in order to bring more capital on this. And when we talk about new business model, as a banker, if this is new, you don't have track record, so you consider this as very risky. But in fact, this is not the case. That we have to bring innovative mechanisms in order to unlock and to leverage on what has been done on the public side as well. So it's about it's why the Great Rule is a great initiative, and on my perspective, it's a very good opportunity. It's to collaborate and partner on the one side with scientists, NGO, to set a path on what we have to invest, what are the good impacts that we want to reach. And once we have that, it's very valuable for us, because this is not as a banker to say it. We can work on the value chain. We can work on the value of ecosystem services to build this new business model of financing. And retrieve, for instance, mechanisms as outcome-based finance that you will bring corporates that want to pay for the impact you need, in fact, on the ground. And so unlock other investors to pay for this new business model. You can bridge that with sovereign financing, with debt for nature swap mechanism as well, for instance. And so, if you consider maybe it's too long and we'll develop that after, but if you unlock, for instance, financing at the public level by refinancing with guarantee at a better level of financing in order to unlock for public space some money, this money could be bring on the ground on specific project and on which you leverage once again with this impact financing. It could be outcome based, it could be on leveraging on ecosystem services, like for instance for now the much developed the carbon market, but on project well designed and on the path that you have designed under the Great Rule.
Amazing. Yeah, so basically the point is we need to find a way to make conservation bankable. You guys now, and that's a very big change, because 5-10 years ago, banks, they were not even considering investing in this kind of solution. Now they are. So that's an opening of 150 trillion capital market that is right there available. Now, of course, we need to open the door and really not only the door, really, sort of also everything in between to make that flow of capital. And I believe some of the recent assessment of when it comes to SDG kind of gap in terms of the funding is 150 billion per year that we should invest with 0.1% of the 150. I'm not a mathematician, you will have figured it out, but I'm pretty sure it's 0.1% of the total available capital on the capital market. So it's peanuts, right? So we can do it. Now the question is, can we do it fast and together and in the sort of short term that we have? And in fact, to avoid reinventing the wheel 5 years ago when we started developing the Great Road Initiative with our partners, we thought, why don't we try to actually sort of pull in other partners from other kind of parts of the conservation world and other parts of the development world, in particular the green space. And that's why we actually started teaming up with TechnoServe. At that time, they were not so much involved on blue stuff. I think now more and more and more, we're very, very happy because they've been doing and working, and I'm sure Tony is going to talk about that, some amazing stuff on green economy, and we're trying to avoid reinventing the wheel and learn from this. So maybe Tony, over to you.
Thank you. No pressure on all the amazing stuff, so I'd better amaze everyone. So for those of you who don't know TechnoServe, then we're a global NGO, been around for 56 years, and our mission is really around business solutions to poverty, so technical assistance to small businesses, farmers all around the world. We're active in 35 countries, and for that mission to continue into the 2020s, we really recognised that it was impossible if we didn't bring climate and nature, or regenerative business as we like to call it, to the core of that mission. And so that's essentially my goal, is trying to work out how to do that. How do we execute that across the organisation? How do we support 3 billion people that rely on ocean resources for their livelihoods? And so the blue economy and the Great Blue Wall, something close to my heart, because I also have worked a little bit on the Great Green Wall, so it's fantastic to see the concepts working across, is a really important catalyst and accelerator for us to do that. And the way in which we're doing that at TechnoServe is very much about bringing some of those actions which are, understanding the business. We spend a lot of time in these projects understanding how these businesses operate. We really want to tailor that economic approach to say, for a small fisher person, what are the costs of inputs? What are the revenues they can make? What are the challenges with accessing finance from a bank, or the percentage loans associated with that, in order that whatever we develop does have that long-term financial viability. And a good example of that is some of the work we've been doing in our Kenyan Blue Biz program. That's a partnership that we've got with the MasterCard Foundation. And the big focus there has been supporting 15,000 youth entrepreneurs in the ocean regions of Kenya in 4 counties down the Indian Ocean coast, supporting 50% of those businesses who are women-owned as well. And for us, a lot of this comes together in stories of how we are working with some of our clients on the ground, some of those small businesses. And one important one is Dorcas Malajo, who's one of our entrepreneurs on the program. She's a fishmonger from Mombasa County. She's no stranger to some of the hardships of her trade. But for years, she's woven conservation into the work that she's done. And it's her commitment to marine protection is quite personal for her. She's seen firsthand the decline of the fish stocks, and she also knows that if there isn't change, it's going to affect her wider community in the future. And so through that Blue Biz program, what we've been doing is providing Dorcas financial skills, receiving business mentorship, but more than that, it's important because she can provide a platform for future generations of fishmongers and other people in the region to see that success doesn't have to come at the cost of the environment. So in a way, she's not just selling fish, she's really selling a bit of change that can happen in the local community. And those types of stories really matter for impact on these types of projects.
Thanks so much, Tony. Indeed, as a matter of fact, when we started working with TechnoServe 5 years ago, there was no regenerative business program. And it's because, at least I believe that because of, we started really strengthening this collaboration, trying to break the silo between, which used to be more kind of the development world and the other side, the conservation world, that suddenly we kind of realized that, wow, those are very compatible, but we need to reconcile those usage, right? So I'd love to hear from you, Laura, because you're kind of a specialist in kind of trying to vision how can we bring everybody together on the same goals. If you can maybe, tell us a bit more about that and your experience in this. Thanks.
Sure, thanks, Thomas. And really great to be the research, the academic. It can be very controversial on this panel. I might never get invited back, but here goes, I've got the mic. Visioning, I think it was also sort of around this idea of the kinds of transformations that we're trying to enable. Sort of, we have these targets, we have a set of these global goals, but it's already nice to have these numbers on paper, but what does that actually mean in the real world. Like, what does it look like if we actually manage to achieve the SDGs, if we actually manage to achieve the global biodiversity framework in these different places on the ground for real people. So in imagining those kinds of transformed futures, I wanted to come back to this idea of regenerative seascapes, actually. And I think that this is where some of the controversial notions come in, is that seascapes have always been regenerative, right? And I think that what isn't regenerative, or what is that be breaking down that relationship, is how we've actually formulated our economy, right? Which is coming back to what are those different types of flows of capital and finance? What is the economy actually supposed to do? Is it about making profit, or is it about actually meeting the needs of people and ensuring well-being? And I think most of us could probably agree that it's the latter, not the former. And yet what we've designed globally is a profit-making extractivist model. And I think that's actually what we need to be dealing with when we're thinking through these ideas of regenerative seascapes, landscapes, sort of everything. And so that's where there are 2 points I wanted to make on this idea of transformation. And the first one is, it's at that global level, right? Looking at the dominant sort of power players that are setting the agendas that we're really trying to, I think, negotiate with here. But like, you need to put conservation back on the agenda. You need to do things differently. And having World Economic Forum here, I think these are the kinds of players that you're always talking to. There's that sort of global, high-level, top-down kind of process, and you're mentioning dichotomies of these different ones, and it's about bringing that together with the local. And I think that what David was mentioning is, as soon as you go sort of slightly higher up, you lose that really important thing that's happening at the local, because we start to become obsessed with scale and impact, and needs to get bigger, and it can't just be good for 5 people, it needs to be good for 500,000 people, right? It's like, but actually, some of these initiatives, sort of the one that you were mentioning of Dorcas, but there's also a lot of initiatives that we've been working with in Kenya and Mozambique, where just good things are happening on the ground. People, the small, medium enterprises have realized, okay, there's been an excessive sort of fishing of crabs in this area, sort of breaking down the mangroves. So we're going to start an aquaculture project, and actually we're going to be able to meet those needs very locally, sell some excess to the hotels, tourism industry. The story that you were telling, David, I think is exactly those, okay, this is how we reimagine on the ground these types of relationships, the types of economies that are actually maintaining a regenerative system. And I think those are the paradigm shifts that we need to start actually playing around with or implementing ourselves, and sort of on that. Everyone might be familiar with the idea of leverage points of transformation. We're very good at looking at material flows and sort of like, how are we going to reconfigure some of the finance? But it's that paradigm, right? It's the intent, it's the design of the system that I think we really need to reconfigure. I think that's the big challenge actually facing us, but we're starting to open up the conversations, and I think that's the first step in the right direction.
Yeah, no, thanks so much. And I don't think it's actually very controversial what you said. I think it's right on. It is about changing the paradigm. Ultimately, and I often say that the world where we are today has been very much the product of what people call the industrial revolution. If you want to change and move towards a new kind of world, which call it the blue world, the green world, whatever that would be, which is basically what the GBF is calling for, we need a new kind of revolution, and it's a new kind of revolution that will change this paradigm, kind of what we call this regenerative revolution. Now, from a world economic perspective, in just 1 minute, what do you think could be some of the main levers that we can actually sort of action on to try to change that paradigm? What do you think should the world and our community here try to sort of really double down, maybe in the ramp up of UNOC and beyond?
Thank you. I had an answer written and I will completely scratch it. I think the main thing that this community can do is to continue having a constructive dialogue. And why I say that is because, as I was saying before, this COP, and we will continue to see it, has seen increased participation of stakeholders that didn't used to come to these conversations. And the reason why that is happening is because everyone is a little more open, I'll talk particularly about the private sector, about talking and working with the private sector. It's no longer a greenwashing versus not greenwashing thing. Now we recognize that there's opportunities to have a constructive dialogue, to guide some of the investments. And let's face it, the governments and the development agencies have only so much money. A lot of the large transformations that need to happen and that will affect workers directly need to happen with the private sector. So continue that dialogue, be constructive, be productive, be bold.
Perfect, amazing. So let's be bold. So actually, we've been talking, for like few years already with Société Générale, and yes, it does take time because it's a hard nut to crack, right? It's not just like because you've decided that suddenly the economy is going to become regenerative. There is an entire infrastructure, including financial wall and financial infrastructure, that need to be remodeled. And I know that even internally, you've been having a hard time to really sort of find a way to make your own space in there. So how can we help you, and how can sort of find a way that again together move forward?
Thank you. So in the previous panel, we talked about break silos, and I think it's very important if we want to innovate and break this new business model. And we have two dimensions to consider. That if we talk about regenerative economy, is that you are about generate value, but in the long term. And in fact, it's not aligned with the need of immediate viability, economic viability. If we want to finance a new entrepreneur, social entrepreneur, for instance, or you manage this difference in time with the values it will bring in the future. So, for instance, we have worked on some model on regenerative agriculture, but it could be bring as well another model on coastal space on which we are adding a new cash flow for these activities. And we will value the ecosystem services that it will bring in the future, and which we can engage some players that have to pay for this positive contribution impact in order to leverage this new business model. And once they have started, after a few years, they are autonomous, in fact, and we can use this mechanism for new actors. The other dimension is between conservation space and business around. If you consider a protected area, you develop a management plan, and you have some KPIs in terms of evolution of the protection of some species, for instance, some objectives that you want to reach. But your impact by the economic activity around the NPA, in fact, and often it's about reduce pressure or manage the economy differently. So how we connect with the NPA management the right KPI in order to set the pace, in fact, set the true KPI for the business in order to have this financing. For instance, if you look at an ecotourism model, for instance, you can connect this with the value that we will generate by the enhancement of protected area. Or you can include reduce pressure. We have worked, for instance, with Unilever on recycled plastic to transform this as a resource and have a repayment for the collection of the plastic based on the impact that you have. So it's several ways on which we can work to bring private financing.
Thank you so much. So indeed, sort of, the private sector, and in particular the financial sector, is not willing to actually sort of put that money where sort of the mouth is ultimately, because it's our common house. Now, from technical perspective, how do you, based on your experience working with local entrepreneurs, what do you think could be sort of really a critical instrument or sort of action that we can ramp up and scale up and accelerate to support them access that kind of funding?
I mean, I think there's a lot of discussion about continued work with the private sector, be it small-scale entrepreneurship. There's examples where we're working in places like Chile on seaweed programs with larger multinationals like Cargill. That's similar. It's providing a lot of training to seaweed collection, safe use, safe collection, and financial training, and that's providing them more sustainable value chain to actually create demand and offtake for those products in future. So that's another example on the private sector side. But obviously the public sector side matters really much, and if we're going to have private sector investment, that has to be de-risked, there has to be some level of government support. So an equal example that we have in Technoservice, working with the government of Tanzania, we've been partnering with them in Zanzibar to develop economic roadmaps for development there. And that is enabling us to provide specific blueprints for the government to see that the oceans and the seascapes can offer. This is where we were looking at livelihoods for 150,000 households on the island, an extra 4 million in beach level revenues, and also driving $12 million US equivalent across the wider sector. So that public-private piece really matters, and I think that leads me into the final piece, which is, I was at Bloom 24. For any of you who went to it, it was sort of a side conference just around the Blue Zone last week. Many private sector actors went there, and there's a lot of discussion about landscape level investment from the food and ag side. And I think, not a lot of companies at the sort of Cargill scale yet understand what that entails, the level of the different actors involved, public, private, NGOs, local communities. And I think we need to get much better going forwards if we're going to think about scalability and the types of programs that David was talking about helping all actors understand what seascapes are, how they operate, but also what different types of investments need to go in there and over what period of time. And then I think you're in that kind of exciting world where you can talk about scalability, not on something that's so big, people are just like, well, that's meaningless, but not necessarily on something that's so small. With my example with Dorcas, where you're saying, well, that's just one person, how do we get to more?
So that's very interesting. I think it's the perfect segue for Laura, because what you're basically saying is that we need to be able to communicate and kind of sort of almost visualize what a seascape is and how it can be invested in and supported. So maybe Laura, just to finish with you, what would you say are the key ingredients to make that happen? Like kind of this joint vision, just like sort of the $1 million question.
Solve the problem in 1 minute. I think if we're looking at the biggest transformations that we need to enable, we've been talking about this idea of also positive tipping points, right? It is the finance system, and we need to be moving the finance away from nature eroding activities into nature supporting activities. And that would be my ingredient. How we do that, I think my colleagues on the table are much better at being able to do that. I think the other important emphasis that I would just like to make, and it is in this notion of investing in nature-based solutions, right? And I think that a lot of the work that's happening on the ground in place with people where nature is a solution there is really important, but we must not fall into the trap of making nature the solution to what some of these other problems are driving, these global drivers that are happening somewhere else. And I think that that's why I'm super excited by this actually starting in the WIO. We can make this a Pan-African process where it's actually on the ground, being led from the continent, not from somewhere else, where it's like, yeah, we can focus on these solutions here, but our nature is not your solution. You still need to get your house in order in terms of the extractivist, etc., profit-driven behaviors that are actually leading to a lot of these changes on the ground.
Thanks a lot. So no pressure for the financial sector, although, because you just said that they need to stop. So I see Oliver from Standard Chartered, but it's a great news because those guys, Eric, Oli, those guys did not exist 5 years ago, or maybe 10 years ago, and that's so that it's a real sign that the industry is changing. And of course, there is a lot still to be figured out, but I just want to also confirm and affirm we have your back. We're here, and let's figure that out together. So I think I'm just going to thank the panelists here. I'm sorry I did not stick to the script, clearly, but you did not as well. I think it went okay. So thank you so much for having played with me. Thanks. Cheers.
Before you guys all run away, can I get a picture of all the panelists?
Yeah, of course, yeah. The coral reef, yeah.
Thank you.
Not doing a picture of the front. Alain David, il dit non,
Yes, thanks so much. Yeah.
I don't know who you are these days. If we at some point.
Yeah, no, let's. Yeah. No, I have to actually run somewhere else. Actually, today is a bit of a crazy day. Actually, like today, but we'll find a. Yeah. No, it'd be nice to maybe like to have a break or something like that today, or like at one point.
Okay. Yeah,
no cocktail, I heard. Good for you. So thank you. We keep it.
No, this was
C'est bon? Ready?
Hi everyone, thank you so much for attending the event. I invite you all to take a seat as the event is starting. Great, so good afternoon, distinguished speakers, partners, and guests. My name is Carla Lumba, and I'm the youth representative of the Global Fund for Coral Reefs, hosted by the United Nations Capital Development Fund. It's an honor to welcome you all to this landmark event, the launch of the first ever impact loan facility for coral reef conservation. When I was reflecting on what to say for my remarks, I couldn't help but remember the very first time I saw coral reefs in person. I was a teenager snorkeling in Bohol, which is an island province at the heart of the center of the Philippine archipelago. And the vibrant colors and diverse life beneath the surface left me in awe to the point where I didn't want the moment to ever end. And I'm sure a lot of you in the room also felt the same way. My hope is that in 5, 10, or even 20 years from now, younger generations, including the generation of my 2 nephews and my niece, will still have the chance to feel that same wonder. And now, going beyond the ecosystems themselves and marine life, I also remember the time that I got to talk to a fisherfolk, Mang Alfred, and he shared how he sets out to sea each morning, hoping to bring back enough fish to support his family. But most days, he returns with just a handful, barely enough for dinner, let alone to sell at the market. And on days when the fish is scarce and the catch is scarce, he resorts to buying canned sardines for his children, which is an ironic and heartbreaking situation for someone who has spent his whole life fishing. But this is not just an isolated experience. It reflects the harsh reality for thousands of fishers around the globe, especially in the global south, where they face increasing uncertainty, not only about their livelihoods, but also about the very ecosystems that sustain them. And right now, as I'm speaking, I also want to share that just this week, a severe typhoon affected more than 1.2 million families back at home, and many areas are currently submerged underwater, forcing evacuations, and tragically, instead of fully recovering, they are bracing for yet another storm in the coming days. So this is a stark reminder of the increasing frequency and the intensity of climate-related disasters. Healthy coral reefs are vital in mitigating the impacts of such storms, acting as natural barriers that protect us. And without these ecosystems, vulnerable populations face even greater risks. Yet despite their importance, coral reefs face daunting challenges. And I'm sure all of us in this room are aware that SDG 14 is the most underfunded of all SDGs, with a funding gap of almost 175 billion annually. And this financial shortfall has left many MPAs underfunded and often reducing them to paper parts that struggle to realize their full potential. But if we are truly serious about protecting 30% of the oceans by 2030, we need to change how we finance conservation. And this is precisely why we are here today. To take a significant step toward bridging this gap, with the launch of the Blue Finance Impact Loan Facility, a partnership between Blue Alliance and BNP Paribas. Supported by early UNCDF GFCR capital, this initiative brings hope for a more sustainable future and signals a new pathway that demonstrates that it is indeed possible to invest in nature in a way that benefits both the people and the planet. The creation of MPAs is a necessary step in safeguarding the ocean. And my hope is that we leave here today not just with new ideas, but also with a renewed sense of urgency and responsibility. Consider the interconnectedness of our lives and the natural world. Each of us plays a role in this web, and the choices we make today will resonate far into the future. And so, as we move forward, let's carry with us not just all these innovative solutions, but also a deep commitment to the legacy that we aim to create for coral reef ecosystems, for young people such as myself, and for fisher folk like that of Mang Alfred. And with that, it is now my honor to welcome Dr. Makame Omar Mokame, Director of the Department of Marine Conservation at the Ministry of Blue Economy and Fisheries in Zanzibar for his remarks. Thank you once again, everyone, and I look forward to an inspiring session ahead.
Thank you, everyone. Good afternoon. As I've been introduced, I'm from Ministry of Blue Economy and Fisheries in Zanzibar. And currently, my role is to lead the Department of Marine Conservation. Zanzibar, like any other small island states, their marine resources are facing many challenges. Climate change, overutilization, as we have a majority of villagers or local community depend on fishing, but also other stressors like overuses and I can say unsustainable tourism activities are among the stressors that impact marine resources as well as biodiversity. So in Zanzibar, currently we have 5 marine conservation area or MPA. We have 4 in the main island Zanzibar and 1 in Pemba. We call it PEC. This in Pemba is largest MPA. It's got like 800 plus kilometers square. And this is where we work with Blue Alliance. So these 5 MPA, as have been mentioned earlier by the earlier presenter, they are facing challenges in terms of financing. It's like any other in the world that they are saying currently there is a $700 billion budget deficit that going direct to the biodiversity. So these MPA, they are also facing the same issues. They are underfunded. For example, the one that we work with, the Blue Alliance, it has got like, before Blue Alliance, only 1, we call it patrol station. It has got only 10 employees. Out of these 10, only 4 are rangers. Thinking about 800 plus kilometers square of this particular MPA. So you can see there is a lot of challenges. This current government has came up with this idea of blue economy. So Ministry of Blue Economy is new, and the Department of Marine Conservation is also new. The aim is to kind of revitalize or changing the way we work with marine resources, changing the way we manage our resources and the biodiversity. Because we have that budget deficit, then it was easy when Blue Alliance came to think of, why don't we work with the Blue Alliance? For the beginning, we gave Blue Alliance, now our contract cover only half of the MPA, which is 400 something kilometer square. But the way things going on now, they are doing very good job in terms of local people participation. They have managed to bring everyone on board, local people and actors, in such a way that we see kind of a future is bright in terms of managing this part of the ocean. Before that, we had only one financial mechanism, small amount of money coming from government, and money that are the result of entry fee of the tourists who are coming. But note that Pemba, the number of tourists are very small. So we are not getting a lot of money to be able to run this particular MPA. So this kind of contract that we are in with Blue Alliance, it helped to revitalize the way we work, the way we manage and finance our marine area. So currently, this contract has got only 1 year, but we are thinking, why don't we give Blue Alliance the whole of MPA, 800 kilometers square, where they are doing good job, and within 1 year, now we are seeing a lot of changes on the ground. To do that also, the government also thinking about various ways of financing the conservation of marine diversity, because we need money for us to be able to manage and conserve. Why? Because we cannot be able to get good impact in a blue economy, sustainable tourism, marine resources that provide services and functions to fishers and other activities. If the coral reef and ocean in particular, it is not, they are not in good health. We need healthy ocean for us to realize the benefits and or to achieve sustainable blue economy. So we are thinking of various ways, and currently we are trying to change the way we are doing business. And for now, we have changed what they have done over the course of this year, and because it has kind of paved the way.
We are a small NGO, and we're made up of very, very passionate ocean goers, sea people. This is from Alvin, our driver in Philippines, to the CEO, Nico Pascal, who all of you know is pretty much a fish. We co-manage marine protected areas, as you've heard from Dr. Makami, with local governments. So we do that in different countries, and we look at different financing mechanisms for these MPAs, okay? So we address two issues. We address sustainable financing, and we also address management effectiveness. I am really technologically challenged. Where is the... Help. Oh, it's here. No. Okay, so I'm speaking to the wrong side. That's a good way to start. Okay, so at Blue Alliance, we co-manage these marine protected areas in a few sites in Philippines, in Indonesia, in Zanzibar, and soon to be Cape Verde as well. So we manage just about 100, or co-manage just about 110 marine protected areas. I think everyone is aware of it, but I just can't help but mention it again. So everyone knows we're in dire straits, right? We have lost about 50% of our coral reefs since at least the 1960s. And this is with coral reefs being the most studied marine ecosystem. We still managed to lose nearly half of them. We know that marine protected areas are not the silver bullet, you know, they're not the solution, but they're a pretty good framework for managing and conserving coral reefs and other marine ecosystems. And even with having close to 20,000 marine protected areas, and those being financed by grants, philanthropy, government subsidies, and so on, around 70% of them are still underfunded. Okay. So that brings us to where I think Blue Alliance is a little bit unique in that we build innovative, repositive businesses in and around the marine protected areas. And we do that, of course, so that the ecosystem services can flow a bit better. But we also do it to generate long-term income for conservation, and of course we also do it for the people, and those three go hand in hand. So we have, I guess, an interesting financing mechanism. We combine grants and impact investment. And we look at it in a way that grants will take care of the day-to-day NPA activities, the enforcement, and etc. Whereas the impact investment is going to be used for the repositive businesses. And these repositive businesses, as I'm sure everyone here knows, are aimed at delivering positive impact and at the very least not having a negative impact on the marine ecosystems. So we focus at this moment on 4 repositive businesses. There's Blue Wild, which looks at ecotourism, Aqua Hub, which is community-based aquaculture, Samaki Blue, our fisheries supply chain, and Blue Carbon. And I mean, impact investment is interesting, maybe not for the financiers in here, but definitely for the ecologists and conservationists. The impact investing market is huge. I mean, Jin reported about 3 trillion in 2022. However, a lot of that is not actually going to marine conservation, right? We're not attracting it. And I think it's because we don't have a pipeline, or not many investment-ready projects that impact investors are interested in. And I think a part of that is because we speak different languages. And I mean, I'm the perfect example of that. When I met the CEO of Blue Alliance, and at that point I was working for the government of Barbados as a marine biologist, that's what I knew. And when he brought this idea of impact investments in conservation, I was like, hell no, that's not gonna work. It will never work. And bit by bit, as I learned more about finance, I guess it helped that he was also a marine biologist. That conversation changed. And I think this is why I really want to shout out ICRI for having a space where we can have these conversations with the guys involved in finance and also the ones involved in ecology. And I mean, all of our partners here, I was actually really nervous about talking today because this is not my comfort zone. But as I look around, I see partners who become friends, right? Right? Okay, yeah. So that is a way that we are looking, this new financial strategy for financing the MPAs that we co-manage, including the one that Dr. McCamey spoke about so well. So let's go into what our facility is. And we've named this Impact Loan Facility Blue Finance. And some of you might know that was the original name. That was our original name. But too many people thought we were an insurance company and they didn't want to talk to us at all. So we left Blue Finance as the name for the Impact Loan Facility. And we're so much more than that. So our new name is Blue Alliance. I haven't confused you. So this is it. The Blue Finance Impact Loan Facility. And it is a $3 million US impact facility. And how it works, I think this is the simplest way that we could find to showcase how it works. They're impact loans that will come from the private sector. And the money from those will go into the 4 positive businesses that I spoke about earlier. The profits are going to go into marine protected areas, supporting both nature and people. And we're still going to be using grants for the MPA activities, but the idea is that eventually we hope that we will be able to transition from grants and actually just use the profits from our reef positive businesses. And this is all new. And this is the first impact loan facility for MPAs in the world. So I think it's really something to be proud of. And I really have to thank our partners for embarking on this with us. So BNP is, of course, special. All of our partners are special. I mean, you're going to hear from Global Fund for Coral Reef. A little later, you're going to hear from ORA. Those are our anchor donors. Our anchor investors, our anchor investors are primarily BNP and also UBS. And you will hear from most of these as we go on. I just wanted to give a last slide on the benefits of having an impact loan facility, and it's essentially a one-stop shop for impact investors. And I've been able to see how difficult it is to actually set up such a facility. I mean, it's been years of talking and discussing with BNP Paribas. And I need to repeat, as I said yesterday in a session, that when I first came to speak to the impact investors, my hackles were up, because I just knew that I would have to give too much in conservation, that I figured they wouldn't really understand. And bit by bit, as we had these conversations, and we've had some really intensive conversations with BNP and UBS especially, we come to understand each other, and we give and take, and we give and take. So BNP is extremely special to us as our anchor investor. But this impact facility, as I mentioned, it's going to improve the quality of project design and execution. BNP especially was very, very helpful with this part of the structure of the impact loan facility. It will create efficiency and economy of scale, because we're going to aggregate, and we heard quite a lot today and yesterday about having these small projects, and it's not possible, or impact investors are not interested in these small tickets. So we're aggregating through our 121 marine protected areas. It reduces the investment risk through diversification across revenue models and country regions. And you can read the rest, but it is a very different way of, I think, investing in the marine environment. So with that, I am going to introduce our next speaker. And it gives me great pleasure to introduce Antoine Cyr, who is the Senior Advisor and former Head of Company Engagement for BNP Paribas.
Thank you, Angie. I was just in a meeting regarding the role of the fishers in the stewardship of the sea, and they ask one question: when you want to solve the problems of the sea through sustainable fishing, why don't you ask to the fishers? Because they know. And I have another question. Sometimes when there are problems of funding, when you need to solve a funding gap, it could be interesting to ask the bankers why there is a funding gap, because the fishers are fishing fish, and the bankers, our job is to fish money. So we also have practices. So what I want to share with you is very shortly my experience as a diver, and to a longer extent my experience as a banker. So as a diver, it's like what was said by Carla, it's very obvious that the coral reefs are in danger, and it's very easy to understand how it comes. For example, when the sharks are not there anymore in a coral reef, the coral reef is going to die. And this is something you can see based on experience. As a banker, what we can see is that yes, there is a lot of money in the financial system, and a lot of projects regarding nature are underfunded, and especially, as was mentioned by Angie and by Carla, the marine protected areas are underfunded. So one of the reasons of this situation is that the projects that can regenerate biodiversity and that can help conservation of coral reefs and such and develop sustainable fishing, ecotourism, and whatsoever, are very often small projects. And when you are a large financial institution, it's very complicated to finance small projects, because especially if those small projects are very remote from your base camp. Of course, BNP Paribas, we are based in Europe. We are used to finance small projects and to assess them in Europe. But the coral reef is not our natural ecosystem. It's a completely different system. And what is absolutely necessary when you are a banker is to understand the underlying to whom you grant money. It applies to loans and it applies to investment. So very often you have this funding gap just because the bankers are here, the projects are here, and we just say, okay, your project is a small project, we would need days and days and weeks to understand it, and this is not something we can do. So one of the solutions can be in a blended finance approach to partner with organizations that are in a situation to know the projects. And that's exactly what is provided by Blue Alliance. They contribute to the management of a large number of marine protected areas, and they can help us in the sourcing, in the monitoring, in understanding which are the good projects in terms of ecotourism, in terms of sustainable fishing, in terms of sustainable aquaculture, and of course of blue carbon. Because we know that in all those matters, the devils are in the details. So that's why we started this project with a lot of enthusiasm. We believe that if it unfolds correctly, we could go up to 35 million US dollars granted as loans to Marine Protected Alliance project, and it's really a good project. I must say that I'm very happy of the cooperation we had with Blue Alliance, and of course also with all the friends we know well at ORA, at Global Fund for Coral Reefs, and all organizations. And this was developed through a unit we have at BNP Paribas, which is called the Positive Impact Business Accelerator, which engage money of the bank. So it's not asset management, it's asset owning. We engage money of the bank to do experiments and to find very good systems to be able to move the needle. So thank you for giving us this opportunity. It's really groundbreaking, and I hope that it will unfold and that there will be a lot of development for the ocean, but also for terrestrial biodiversity one day, who knows. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm going to introduce another one of our friends and colleagues, one of our anchor donors that have been with us almost in the very, very beginning, Pierre Badeau, Director of Global Fund for Coral Reefs.
Thank you. Another Frenchman.
I'm very, very happy to be here today. Very proud that we get to that level. I think it was when we were designing the Global Fund for Coral Reef, it was kind of a natural match with Blue Alliance. We also had a lot of talks with the two co-founders on trying to really understand the model and the best way to support it. We were one of the first supporter. This model really matched very well what we've been trying to achieve with the Global Fund for Coral Reef. Generate conservation impact, and at the same time being able to develop a portfolio of a pipeline of reef positive businesses that can generate revenue for the sustainable protection of those reefs. And the Blue Alliance model has all of those components. The beauty also of the model is that it targets it helps grow a network of new NPAs and help us reach the 30 by 30 by really going local. I mean, the model you have in the Philippines and the way you work with local municipalities, the model you have in Pemba, working with the government and local stakeholders, that's really something unique that is anchored with communities and allows to bring the financing to those institutions that do not have the means to increase their marine protected areas. And in addition to that, you build revenue models and you create a local blue economy footprints. And I've seen your project in the Philippines. I've been there. I've been able to see how you transform the local economies, how you worked on the mud crabs, on the sustainable fishery, how you bring new practices to ecotourism. This is really groundbreaking, and I'm extremely proud and happy to see that BNP Paribas and UBS are now coming with impact loans. We are doing it. It's in the making, and I'm also very pleased to see that you are ready to scale. If that works, we are also ready to scale on the GFCR model. We've made a commitment of 10 years to support the Blue Alliance and extension of their NPA network. And we hope that others are going to replicate that model, that other organizations are going to learn from it and go elsewhere and help all of us reach the 30 by 30. We really need to accelerate today. We need those models to be known, and we need to bring more financiers. We need to bring more grants, and we also need governments to speak about the benefits of those co-management models. And I'm extremely pleased to see the Zanzibari government bringing the value of those models and already thinking about how they can extend and how also these can be models that will be sustainable on the longer term with co-management agreements that can really extend over several years and maybe decades. Yes, I think I will stop here. I think I'm extremely proud and extremely happy to see this happening, and please, if all of you can support and upload the work that they are doing, it's a fantastic breakthrough. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Pierre. And from this, we go to our other anchor donor, ORA. So introducing Chip Cunliffe. And, well, Chip, you can come here.
Thanks, Angie. Wow, look at this. Very busy room. I've done well. It's great to be asked to speak today, and very proud to be part of one of the organisations that have sort of sat behind and supported Blue Alliance and the work that they're undertaking. And certainly from our perspective, it's I think probably just one of those that sort of transcends some of the work that we've been doing across ORA. So as I'm sure some, if not many of you know, ORA is a multi-sector or multi-stakeholder organisation that brings together finance and governments and the development sector and others to drive investment and finance into the ocean and coastal nature-based solutions, with the primary aim to make 250 million climate vulnerable coastal people more resilient to the impacts of climate change and ocean risks by 2030. And one of the things we are very focused on is around 30 by 30, and of course here we are in Cali focusing on that as a key outcome of the talks here, and then alongside that, how we drive investment into the space to allow it for that to sustainably or for it to sustain itself through these kind of financing mechanisms. And I'm very, very aware of Target 19, of course, and the need to drive $200 billion of investment into the space every year, which is not insignificant. But I think that when it comes to how it's depending on how long their grant lasts for, we're obviously looking here at something that is completely different, and I think it sets you apart in terms of how you're able to finance into the longer term and more sustainably into the longer term as well. So for us, that's a really key focus, and it has that long-term vision. And I know it's been already communicated today, but of course it's also around that local impact. I was very lucky, or have been very lucky actually twice now. So I was in Pemba last year and visited the location that we discussed just a second ago, but also into Mindoro, into the Philippines earlier this year, and seeing the on the ground impact that the financing of these coral positive businesses are actually having for local communities, and that I think it's really important. And of course, not everyone can do that. But it's allowing us to be able to showcase to the funders like the Government of Canada and potentially other funders, and I know we're in discussion with their other governments about potential funding, and others driving finance into the UBS, I think is a really key and critical piece of the puzzle. So we're delighted to be part of it. We're delighted to be sort of to support you and what you're undertaking. And congratulations on today's announcement.
Thank you very much, Jim. And before we go to questions, I'm sure there are lots of them. I just wanted to invite Antoine back up, who's going to speak about an impact loan facility, something I neglected to do.
No, you didn't neglect. It's just to rebound the point on the point of CHIP, because for the people who are not financial specialists in the room, it's important to understand what an impact loan is. An impact loan is a loan where the interest rate for the borrower will be reduced if you meet certain sustainability KPIs. And there is a true rationale from the lender to do this, is that in such areas, we consider that the business model will be only successful if it really delivers impact in terms of sustainability for the people, for the nature. So there is a real rationale to do that, but of course to be able to do that, we need partners, we need scientists. That's why people like NG are absolutely essential. We need to have people that understand really what is being done on the ground, and to partner with people who are able to monitor the real execution of the KPIs.
Thank you very much, Antoine. Can I invite all of the speakers to sit here? And I'm gonna open it up for questions. Are there any? Carla, you're a speaker. Makami, you're a speaker. You can direct your questions here. Okay, no questions. We explained everything. Thank you. Thank you.
My question is, are you only addressing MPAs or also OECMs? So, like, how do you address the effect of MPAs and the disbursement effect of fisheries to other areas other than MPAs outside of the
No, it's for the moment it's clearly linked to projects that are in marine protected areas. So you need to start from somewhere. So you have businesses in ecotourism, you have businesses in the supply chain of fisheries, you have business models producing blue credits, but you have to be very careful with all this. You have to really accompany the projects which really provide a project in terms of sustainability. And for us, it's really good to have partners that allow this, but you have to start from somewhere. So from the moment, it's really about projects located in marine protected areas, which are such kind of projects. And we did very completely give the list of the type of projects that will be covered for the moment.
Yeah, if I could just add, sorry, I was distracted taking photos. But yes, we are concentrating in and around MPAs because there's a legal framework that exists in these areas. And I mean, I'm sure you know the sea belongs to everybody, right? So what we're trying to do within this legal framework is the only way that we can see it working in and around marine protected areas.
Thank you. Ulrike, co-founder of Reefs. I was wondering how high are the interest rates if impact KPIs are met?
You know, the impact KPIs, I will not elaborate on the interest rates, but it's basically interest rates which are, I would say, relatively low compared to the market and to the capacities to such projects to get financing, and the sustainability KPIs have to be relatively slight. You cannot change completely the economy of the project with the sustainability KPIs because there is a graduation. There is very often a graduation depending on the way you reach the KPIs. So you have to be cautious with it. But clearly, it's not a project we run for profit. BNP Paribas, it's a project that we run for experiment, but maybe, of course, one day there will be a huge business model with nature. For the moment, we are doing experiment, and we are here to help and not to and not to increase our profits at this stage with such projects.
If I can just add to that a lot of it is performance related. So with many of our partners, if we set targets, right? And if we exceed the targets, the interest rate is less. If we don't meet our targets, the interest rate is more. So I think it's a really good system because it really does push us. I mean, we did need a lot of incentive to do more and to do better, but it gives you that extra incentive to do so.
Hi, James Spurgeon, environmental economist at the Natural Capital Consultancy Sustained Value. Absolutely amazing initiative you've got. It's incredible. I've been looking into this space for many years, but this looks to be a fantastic model. The talk of the town at the moment seems to be biodiversity offsets and biodiversity credits. So I didn't see any mention yet of that. Just wondered what your views are on the potential for that and how you're looking to bring those ideas into the financing model.
If I could start on that one. So biodiversity credits for us is extremely new. I just got the mandate to start looking into it last month. So it is something that we're considering. I'm not saying that it is something that we are going to use and run with, but I'm now trying to wrap my head around the whole issue, the whole thing of biodiversity credits. I had some meetings yesterday where we discussed the KPIs and because we had to develop some really serious KPIs to Global Fund for Coral Reef. They keep harassing me every few months about reporting on these KPIs. We had to do the same for BNP Paribas and UBS. So we have that experience. So the one group, at least with the biodiversity credits, is asking us to come and bring that expertise to them. And then together we can develop something that maybe we can pilot in our MPAs. But it's still very, very new for us.
Yeah, there is a need to develop the standards and the market. And who is ready today to buy those credits? I don't think the NPA will come and buy those credits. So it's a bit too early. We are looking at it. Blue carbon piece also is quite interesting, but it's very early. The mangroves. But this is definitely something I hope that in 2-3 years will be in place. The market that can go but
and I think that just to add onto that, then it's very nascent. I think it's all around data, or partly around data, and I think partly around the need for those guardrails, so that the credits are developed and supported and in such a way that they are as high level, or not high level, but high quality as possible. Similar to the high quality blue carbon credits, practical guides, etc., that have been pushed out recently.
Thank you. I think we have time for one more question. There was a gentleman in the back.
Thank you. I don't need a microphone. What is the role of governments in this model? It's a great model, but I'm looking at financiers and NGO type people, not government people. So in the Philippines, for example, what is the role of the federal government in the Blue Alliance model?
Okay, so I can speak to that. And perhaps Dr. McCamey might want to speak as well. So our MPAs, we co-manage those MPAs with the governments. That is our mandate. So we are not in anything without the government. So the government's role in that is to oversee our management of the MPAs. We develop a work plan at the very beginning, and we have to report on that work plan periodically to the governments that we work with. In the Philippines, it's mainly the LGUs that we communicate directly with, and we have a co-management agreement with those LGUs. So most of those are LMMAs, and I see your eyes go up in the air, but my experience, okay, so I'm not going to say anything about that. Yes, it is done with the government. There's no other way that this could work.
But in Philippines, so you're working with LGUs, not national government. So you're not working on the national MPA network,
No.
you're working on the LMMAs.
Yes, exactly. Yes. And in Pemba,
But the federal government, when we, you and us, are discussing with the federal government the lessons learned from the models and trying to see how that can be replicated across. We were, in our last mission to the Philippines, we had several discussions with the federal government, looking at the model and what we've learned and how this can be replicated. Also, to get into the Philippines, we had to seek government authorization. And we are the UN, and we supported them with UN funding through UNCDF. And we had to seek government authorization and and agree on the objectives, agree on the amount of funding, and agree on the location. So this is really done very closely with not only the local government who signed the co-management agreement, but also with the federal government who allow us to test the model in those local municipal groups.
Yeah, thanks. Give experience of Zanzibar. Again, government is like an oversight kind of institutions. Like whatever we are doing, we plan together, we execute it together. If, for example, Angie presented various like livelihood kind of options, like Samaki Blue, Aqua Hub, we sit down and discuss together, and the government give go ahead of this project after discussion with them. So it's like a kind of an oversight. We sit together, we plan together, and we execute together various these livelihood options that have been presented.
Maybe also just to add that the source of funding from the Global Fund for Coral Reef came from government and private philanthropy. So what allowed us to test the model through the Global Fund for Coral Reef, we pulled funding from Germany, UK, France, Canada, US. We funding from private philanthropy, private family foundation, Bloomberg, builders, and we use these funding to de-risk and establish the model.
People have been for long seeking for blended finance, and this is really a good example of blended finance. So you can see that at the end of the day, everybody is around on the table, the NGOs, the financiers, and without the governments you cannot do this. They do the legal framework, they are here for a lot of reasons, and they are even a part of the funding through the coral reef, so it's real blended finance.
Thank you very much to all the speakers. Thanks to you for your questions. Thanks for coming. I don't think we were expecting so many people. We'll be around so you can talk to us after if there are more questions. But at this point, I just wanted to introduce. I'm giggling because I still can't pronounce your name. I'm so sorry.
Pronounce it.
Pradeep Curricula Surya.
Well
You can have your laugh.
Well done.
Executive Director of UNCDF to give us the closing remarks. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Well done, Andrew. Well, there isn't a lot to say after what we've just heard, but I want to reflect on a few thoughts. All this is very nice, but I don't think we have the time to experiment. The power of the ocean, I think we all recognize what we're facing right now. We don't have a lot of time, and some of us have experienced what that means. It's nearly 20 years ago when we had the tsunami in Sri Lanka. Within a matter of seconds, 80,000 people was gone. My high school economics teacher, who instilled in me, the first microeconomics supply and demand curve, himself, his children, his parents, all gone within a few seconds. This is a slow threat to all of us, what's going on now with the extinction of corals, and we need to call it that. So there's a lot of human faces behind this nice picture. I was reflecting on that. If you are out, in coastline of Djibouti or in Comoros Islands or out in Pacific, you know that there are lots of people who ultimately depend on these resources, and ultimately who also we rely on to ensure that this resource is looked after. And we got to figure out ways in which to get resources out to them. And it's not grant money, I'm afraid. Because we can keep throwing grant money at this problem for all the time that we have left. It's not going to scale. And this is where we got to figure out, and I think we need to take the elements of what I think is really an audacious effort to try and find ways to make the market work in our favor by effectively de-risking. That's what we're doing here. The only reason this is working is because there's a UN platform that is not credit rated, that can take the risk, that can absorb the risk. And this is why you feel comfortable to come in, right? You're a bank. You're an institution that has responsibilities to your shareholders. It's the same regulatory structure that governs you, that governs many other financial institutions, which, in my view, is also what prevents the kind of investment that needs to be taken, the kind of risks that need to be absorbed. And this is why I'm very proud of this initiative, because as the UN Capital Development Platform, we can take the risk. We're designed to take the risk. And it's what you do, Angie, that ultimately will demonstrate the success of these kinds of initiatives, because we need to figure out ways to do 1 million of these, right? And we need to do it tomorrow. So I hope these lessons from this conversation can really be distilled into effectively a war plan, a game plan on how we're going to scale this up, because we really need to get that done today. So I really look forward to working with many of you, and you're all great supporters of GFCR, and hopefully together we can figure out one last take at this problem, because frankly, I don't know about you, but I think that's about all we have left. One last take. We're only, what, 4 years, 6 years from 2030? I don't know. I mean, I don't know what we're going to do after that, because the time gap that we have is fast shrinking. So let's figure out a way to get to work. Thank you.
We're done. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
I'm going to thank you.
Thank you so much.
We're going to take a picture.